Welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I'm your host, Ryan Cartlidge, and I'm passionate about helping you master your animal training skills using the most positive and least intrusive approaches. Here at ATA, we understand that navigating the vast challenges you encounter in training requires a comprehensive base of knowledge and experience. It's common to face obstacles and rough patches on your journey that can leave you feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Therefore, since 2015, we've been on a mission to empower animal training geeks worldwide. We've aided thousands in developing their skills, expanding their knowledge, boosting their confidence, and maximizing their positive impact on all the animal and human learners they work with. We are excited to do the same for you. Simply visit www.atamember.com, join our vibrant community, and geek out with us. And of course, in the meantime, enjoy this free podcast episode as we explore new ways to help you supercharge your training skills, grow your knowledge, and build your confidence, so that you can craft a life that positively impacts every learner you encounter. But we will start today's episode where I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show a very good friend of mine and a very good friend of ATA's, the fantastic Veronica Boutelle. Veronica has been helping positive reinforcement dog trainers build sustainable, values-aligned businesses since 2003. She's the author of How to Run a Dog Business and a regular contributor to leading industry publications, including PPG's Barks from the Guild, APDT's Chronicle of the Dog, APDT Australia's Clicks, and the APDT New Zealand member newsletter. Veronica is a sought-after speaker at conferences and dog training schools internationally, where she teaches trainers how to help more dogs while creating businesses they genuinely enjoy. Her work has reached trainers across North and South America, Europe, and the Southern Hemisphere, and she's also a long-standing member of the Clicker Expo faculty. What really sets Veronica apart is the way she combines her experience as a professional dog trainer and business owner with her background as a classroom teacher, educator, and curriculum developer, allowing her to create practical, effective programs that support trainers at every stage of their business journey. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Veronica Boutelle back to the show today, who's patiently waiting by in the US of A. Veronica, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us again at Animal Training Academy.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
It's our pleasure, and thanks for reaching out and initiating conversation about it. We're always thrilled to share and always leave inspired after our conversations together. Then today we're going to be talking about a business view lens of some of the air quotes, softer skills that animal trainers and business owners wrestle with. Based on common challenges I see expressed within the Animal Training Academy, I pulled out a couple of key themes. Firstly, managing imposter syndrome and building confidence. And secondly, the importance of networking and staying connected with other business owners and trainers. And I've got a bunch of questions inspired from survey results we ran with our audience, so they should be highly relevant to the real challenges people are actually facing. Before we go over into those, would I be accurate in assuming that these are common themes in the people that you work with as well, Veronica?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think our industry, I mean, at least our positive reinforcement corner of it, I think is rife with imposter syndrome and isolation. And thankfully, I think some people in our industry, you included, are doing a lot of really good work to battle that. But yeah, it's so common. And I think the two things together are particularly painful, because if you are experiencing imposter syndrome and you are isolated from other trainers, you don't realize that you are not alone in that. And it feels like it's just you. But yeah, from where I sit working with dog trainers around the world, you should know that if that sneaks up on you from time to time, or if it's something that kind of vibrates under your skin on an ongoing basis, to know that you are definitely not alone in that.
And so you mentioned that you work with dog trainers around the world. Do you see any differences in different areas, different locations, different regions of the world, or in your mind, is this a human experience regardless of your context and your culture?
I think it's a human experience. I don't, my pet theory, no pun intended, is that it's something perhaps about the nature of the people who tend to are drawn to this calling, this particular work. But yeah, it's not. I don't really see significant changes from one place to another. And it's interesting, when I first started traveling outside of the U.S. and talking to dog trainers and speaking at conferences and working with more and more international clients. And this was terrible at timing, but I would say it's 12, 15 years ago now. I expected to find a difference. I really didn't. And the other thing I noticed is that many people outside of the US, I found dog trainers expected that US trainers wouldn't feel that there was something about, because our country has sort of a history of entrepreneurialism and some of our cultural aspects would indicate that we might be overconfident and quite cocky about things, but I have not found that to be the case at all. I think it doesn't it doesn't matter whether I've been down in South America or here in the States or out in New Zealand or Europe. It's endemic. It definitely seems to be part of our industry.
So, as we know here at Animal Training Academy, imposter syndrome, confidence, they are just labels. So I'm curious if we could unpack those before we dive any further. How would you define, firstly, imposter syndrome, Veronica, and what does a healthy level of confidence look like with you with regards to the animal trainers you work with?
I'm a little bit uncomfortable defining imposter syndrome. What I might do is describe how I see it play out. Some of the language that I hear, some of the sort of regular discourse that I'm privy to, which is just, it seems to me that part of it is this sense of, I don't know enough. Who am I to ... There are other people, other trainers who know so much more than me. Why would anybody trust me to X, Y, or Z? What if I don't know enough to do it, quote unquote, right? What if I cause harm? What if somebody doesn't agree with me? What if somebody doesn't trust me? These are some of the ways that I see it play out. And I think I do have, I'll answer your question first, but I do have a few ideas about why that might be and why it's so common. But to answer the second part of your question, what does a healthy level of confidence look like? I think we often have this notion that confidence is about never feeling doubt, never feeling fear, always feeling like you know exactly what you're doing and you're doing it exactly right. Like it's somehow the opposite of these feelings of doubt and fear that come along with imposter syndrome. And I don't see confidence that way. I see confidence as being able to push through doubt, being able to battle those negative narratives with something positive when they come up, when they pop up. I see confidence as an ability to and a willingness to push through new things, the fear of new things, doubt about things, and to in a business sense to create systems that increase the comfort level with the day-to-day things that you do, to learn new skills so that you don't have the fear of the unknown. It's not so much that you somehow become this whole new person. It's more that you have a set of systems and skills, and maybe the belief that if you keep moving, you'll find a way forward. If you keep moving, you'll become more comfortable with things. So I do think that that's part of it, is that often things like imposter syndrome and doubt and fear, they make us stop trying. We stop taking action, and then it becomes self-fulfilling. Whereas when you take action in the face of doubt or fear and you learn something new, you develop a skill set, you find a way forward, I think that's where the confidence starts to build, and it becomes stronger and stronger just through the doing of it. And I think over time it becomes less fearful to act in those moments.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. Did you think that you are a confident person?
I would say that I am a confident person. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I never have a moment of doubt. It doesn't mean that I never have fear. It doesn't mean that it's not scary to try something new and risk it failing. I'm a human being, and part of owning a business is that you have, being a business owner means you're going to have a certain number of successes and a certain amount of failure, and not everything you try is going to work out the way you hoped it will. I think confidence is about being able to shake it off when something doesn't go the way you hoped it would, and being willing to try the next thing, to try the next idea. And so, yeah, I would say that I'm definitely confident in that way, but and that I have learned over time, most of the time, to love that kind of experimentation. So, to love going in and seeing what's going to happen. But it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean I don't have a rough day. It doesn't mean, that I don't have a moment of thinking, oh man, I really wish I hadn't made that decision or tried that. But, it's going to happen on occasion, but can you shake it off and try the next?
Have you ever been someone to think about yourself as having imposter syndrome? Or do you still think that about yourself sometimes?
I don't, it's not something that has been as much a part of my experience as I think it is for some of the people that I work with. I've been very fortunate in that it's not a constant companion for me, but yeah, it happens on occasion, right? I think for me at least, I think that if you are serving people and you really, really care about the people that you serve, that there are going to be those moments of fear where you say, okay, but wow, they just trusted me to do this for them, whether that's to train their dog or whether that's to help them build a business that is financially successful and allows them the life that they love. And so, have I woken up occasionally in the middle of the night thinking, in the middle of a recession, can I guide people through? Yeah, there are those moments where you just think, who am I to be doing this? But I think, again, when those moments start, it's about stopping and saying, well, yeah, okay, who am I to be doing this? Like, oh, yeah, okay, for this reason and this reason and this reason. And ultimately, I think a huge part of pushing through those moments of doubt, for me at least, and it's something that I think that we've really found to be, very powerful with the clients and our Thrive members that we serve. It's always about coming back to service. Okay, you could stop. You could let the fear and the doubt stop you, but come back to your why, your purpose. Why do you do what you do? Because I've been in this industry since 2000, and I have met, I can't think of a positive reinforcement dog trainer I've met who was just in it for the money or just in it. We do this because we really love dogs. And so I think that there's that moment where what I always say to people is the way to push through the fear is to think about what happens if you don't do it. Who do you mean to be serving, right? And what good could you do in the world? But if we let the fear and the doubt get in the way, if we let those internal voices get in the way, we lose the opportunity to go and make a difference in the next dog's life, who the person who would have called you if you had put that piece of marketing out, for example, or the dog you could have helped if you had, pushed through the fear of selling and you learned a sales script that feels comfortable and ethical in your mouth. And it's these sorts of things where the price of not pushing through the fear is so big, not just for you, not just for ourselves, but for those that we serve. And the gain of pushing through is enormous, both in terms of the building of confidence and the way we feel about ourselves, but I think especially also for the good that we can do in the world as a result.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't thought about that before, I don't think. The one thing that's sticking out to me as you're talking is a specific word that I think I'd have to listen back to say this with 100% certainty, but I think you said more than any other word just then, and that is fear. And I don't know if I've really seen or had a conversation where we've just addressed this in this way, but is imposter syndrome, is it fear-based? Is it because people are scared?
I think so. I think it's a big part of it. It's certainly something that I see in our work and Thrive. And so you think about imposter syndrome, I think that there are a number of reasons for it. And I also think that it might be helpful when we talk about this, Ryan, to think about there's imposter syndrome about training skill and there's imposter syndrome about business. And I think from the training skill standpoint, some of that I think is because there is so much to learn, right? I mean, it's complex skill set. And we care so much. We care so much about getting it right. And then there's the lack of really good clarity about what makes somebody quote unquote ready to go out and proclaim themselves a professional dog trainer and start to do the work, right? I mean, some countries have some baseline credentials that are required, some don't. But if you think about our industry compared to something like law or medicine or even accounting, there isn't really sort of an agreed upon baseline that says, okay, now you are ready. You know what you need to know. And then I also think, unfortunately, outside of pockets like ATA or Thrive, there's a lot of judgment and strife inside our industry, even inside of the positive corner of it. And we're not always as positive with and kind to each other as we might be. And I think that part creates fear. So there's the fear of not knowing enough to do good and possibly not knowing enough such that we do harm. But I also think there's that fear of judgment, of putting ourselves out there and then, being called out for it. And then on the business side of things, I think that there's a fear of rejection and a fear of failure, which is so human. I mean, it's just human. And also that fear of judgment and attack, because of course, much marketing is very public. And so I think that's a part of it as well. I hear all the time dog trainers worried about posting in social media for marketing, or putting a marketing piece out, like a teaching piece out into their local community for fear of what other trainers might say about it or think about it. And so and then of course the fear of rejection by potential clients, and the fear of putting in a lot of effort to try to put this business out there and then it doesn't happen. That it just doesn't go. So I do think that there's a lot of fear mixed up inside of that. And I am not a psychologist. I don't have a background to claim any kind of scientific understanding of this. And I think often, how these things interact, is imposter syndrome something that causes fear? Does fear cause imposter syndrome? Or is it just sort of a self-fulfilling cycle that goes on? I don't know, but I do, when I listen to dog trainers talk about maybe why they don't put a piece of marketing out, or why they don't try something, or why they're afraid to to tell a client that they need 12 sessions instead of 3, that a lot of, or why they are afraid to insist on set appointment times that, and that don't require them to work at night or on weekends if they don't want to, or to enforce a cancellation policy. When I think about those conversations, that are part of my, everyday fabric of the work that I do, one of the big themes that I see running through all of that is fear.
Yeah, and I experience that on a probably daily basis, I would say. I mean, I'm scared of not being a good enough dad, Veronica. Like, it is something.
You and probably any other parent who cares, right?
Exactly right. But but I think the interesting part of this is that I don't know, and maybe people do, because I don't know what other people think, and maybe we just don't talk about this enough. But I don't know if other people like frame it like that to themselves, like they actually acknowledge they're scared.
I don't know. I mean, I will say, in terms of talking to dog trainers in business, I hear the words "I am afraid" or "I'm scared" too a lot. Yeah, and I'm afraid they'll be mad, or I'm afraid that nobody will want it. And I think sometimes the semantic construction is different, but I still hear the emotion underneath. But I do hear those words themselves quite a bit. I think the kind of thinking back to what you said about, you were asking about, confidence. What does confidence look like? I think confidence looks like action. I mean, I think, I mean, that's, to me, that's what it is, because it's like you have the fear about being a good enough dad. There are two very, very basic ways of handling that. One is to show up and try, and one is to not, right? And so, you care so much about being a good dad, and your response to that is to show up every day and keep trying, and to learn from each experience, and to continue to get better. Some people leave, some people stay but check out. I watch dog trainers. Some people take action, and they say, okay, I'm all right, I'm going to put this marketing piece out in the world. Other trainers spend weeks, months tweaking every tiny little thing, and then tweaking something else, and tweaking something else, and tweaking something else. With this story that if I just make it perfect, rather than putting it out and letting it do its good in the world, I see that that's it's an action, but not one that creates forward momentum. I see other trainers not do any marketing at all. And it doesn't be specifically marketing, but I'm just thinking of that as one area for action versus inaction. And every once in a while, I see a dog trainer say, "This piece is so awesome, and I'm putting it out there, and I know it's going to do amazing things for me. It's going to bring me all these great clients." But that's crazy rare. I mean, most people put it out there. They go, "Okay, well, that is better than perfect. I'm going to put it out there and keep my fingers crossed. Oh God, I hope it works. I hope it works. And gosh, what do you think I should try next in case it doesn't? What should I do next?" And that, to me, is that's the kind of confidence that we can all achieve. That, oh, I know it's going to work. There's no doubt about it. That may, I don't know, that may be a personality trait. Maybe that's something we can achieve, maybe not. But I know that we can all achieve the kind of confidence that is just doing, that is doing in the face of not knowing whether it will work.
So this is making me think about just some things I've been thinking about recently, and that are just acknowledging for myself and observing in others that behavior, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a lot of behavior is motivated, especially in the things we've been talking about, is motivated by status. So we want to be perceived as X, Y, Z. And I feel like that's a really uncomfortable thing to admit. And so I've been working really hard for myself to just be like, I just want status. Like, I don't like it's ugly and it sounds stupid, but like I feel like I'm just resisting being a human to some degree if I try to shove that down. Like it's just such a powerful reinforcer for people. And also validation. If we want to be validated by our peers.
And seen.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't have the language or haven't spent the time unpacking this to articulate it well right now, but it just seems very linked to all of this. That some of the stuff you're talking about, not wanting to put marketing out there because it might not work, others might see it, judge you doing something and it not working, is motivated by a need for validation and status.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The word that popped into my head when you were talking was belonging, a sense of belonging, a sense of being seen, a sense, and I think that that word validation really goes with that as well. Um, and I think that that's one of the things that is difficult about being in an industry that doesn't have a shared set of standards for what qualifies as, a qualified professional dog trainer um, is that how if I decide that I want to be a lawyer and I pass the bar exam, I'm in. I belong, right? I've done the thing, and I know for sure that I know what I need to know. And it doesn't mean that I wouldn't still suffer imposter syndrome or doubt or fear. I mean, but at least I would have that that foundational piece of knowledge that I am quote unquote in the club, right? And I think that that's difficult in our industry. And then, for all sorts of, various historical reasons, we have, quite a bit of isolation that, thankfully, programs like Animal Training Academy and Thrive are creating these safe spaces for trainers to come together and truly be part of a community. But I think so many trainers, do live very isolated from others. And have historically done so. That where do you get that validation from? Where do you get that sense of belonging from? What does it even mean to have status in our industry? Yeah, and so I think that, and all of us, it's hard. If some negative thinking. It's easy for negative thinking to get stuck in our heads, and when we are living in isolation, there's very little opportunity to disrupt that thinking and to interrupt it and replace it with a more positive narrative. And I think that when you pull trainers together and help them find different narratives, help them build confidence by choosing action, and support them in doing that, I think that that there's something about that. I know one of the things I've always loved about some of the things you say, the ripple effect, and I know you think about it in lots of different ways, like out in the world, things like that. But I also kind of think about it inside, just the culture, the community of dog trainers, and just the idea that kind of positivity, it's so much easier to cultivate when you cultivate it together. Than when you try to do it alone, in battling your own thoughts on your own. But yeah, that's really interesting. Validation, belonging, being seen, and being seen as someone worthwhile, and I think as someone worthy, and I think that's something that we all crave as humans.
Yeah, and being seen as someone worthy. And again, these are really unwell thought out thoughts. So thank you, to listener, for being here and listening to us, and Veronica for building them. Being seen as someone worthy could be linked back to that status piece.
Sure.
So if confidence then is taking action, and I really like that, because as you're talking, and you said something like, if we have imposter syndrome, then we might not try. And one of the bits of fallout that we might experience of using labels on animals and on dogs is that we place the cause of the behavior inside the animal. Like inside this animal somewhere there is aggression. And it's not my fault. because it's inside the animal, right? So I'm not going to try. So if we are to take that logic and apply it to imposter syndrome, and we're to say imposter syndrome is inside us, somewhere inside of us is imposter. I have imposter syndrome. It's inside of me. It's part of me. I resonated with that thing you said because it clicked. It went, oh yeah, like that's like the dog and the aggression thing or the reactivity thing. Like maybe we just won't try because it's part of us. It's in there somewhere, and therefore I'm not going to do anything about it. I can't do anything about it. But you talked about taking action. That's one way to build confidence, and it made me think about risk taking. And I and lessons I've learned recently about when you take risks, there are massive learning opportunities, regardless of if the risks eventuate into the outcomes that you desirably would have or not. But it's been on my mind a lot, and it's kind of came up in my thoughts as you were talking, that risk taking is something that, as business owners, we do a lot. But then potentially it's a way to gain confidence. But depending on how you deal with it, if the risk doesn't go and you'll go the way that you ideally would have it go. But what are your thoughts on risk taking, the importance of risk taking, the importance of how we take risks, or not the importance of it, but how do we take risks if they are important in your opinion, and how that ties back into everything we've been talking about?
Well, I don't think you can have a successful business without taking risks. I mean, if what you want is to make your living as a dog trainer, to have a financially successful business that actually allows you to do it for a living, I don't think it's possible. I mean, business is risk taking, right? There's no guarantee, and even once you have a successful business, you'll do it on the way, and you'll do it once you've achieved what you initially set out to achieve, because everything you do is a bit of a risk, right? You decide, gosh, I've got this great idea for this new training service. I really think it would be awesome for my clients who've graduated from XYZ, or I think it would be, fabulous for, people and dogs who ABC, and to create that and put it out in the world to see if it will work. That's a risk. Or you come up with a marketing idea. It might work or it might not. Just any. Maybe you decide, gosh, this year I'm going to try adding, discovery calls in front of my initial consults, and see how that works, and if I like it. And running a business is taking a series of risks. I personally like to think about them as experiments. I think that it is a more positively framed word. I'm not afraid of risk, and I don't think it's something. I don't think it's a negative thing, and I don't think it's something to move away from. But I think that kind of thinking about risk as experiment makes it feel a little bit less intimidating, maybe a little bit less frightening. But I also think that it puts kind of this really sort of energetic spin on it for me, in that we just look at the running of our business as a series of experiments. What does work? What doesn't work? What do I enjoy? What do I not enjoy? What makes a difference for the people and dogs I serve? What makes less of a difference? And that in doing it that way, I also feel that when something works, we can say, okay, that was a great experiment. I'm going to continue to do that. When something doesn't work, I mean, first of all, I really do not believe that we need to fear failure. I think failure is just information. But I also understand that for a lot of people, it has a very negative connotation, and that it chips away at confidence, and it can contribute to imposter syndrome. And so, sometimes I think reframing things, moving away from, language that holds, painful connotation, can be helpful. And so that, when we have an experiment that doesn't work, it's just new information to put into the next experiment, right? It's the same as when we train dogs. We try a few trials, we look at the data, how did that impact the behavior? What decision am I going to make now based on that? And I like to just try to approach business decisions in the same way. So what did I learn from that? And how am I going to take that learning and fold it into the next experiment? And I think that framing it that way means, because the reality is you are going to have some wins and you are going to have some losses, and there's just no way you're never going to run a business for any length of time and not try some things that don't work. And so I think trying to come up with a way of thinking about that allows you to shake things off easily and keep moving forward, and not have that big, to not have it shake your confidence, I think is just really important. So I like to think about risk as experiment, and to go into that with curiosity as opposed to fear. I wonder how this will go. And I also think that sometimes, one of the things that we also teach in Thrive too, in relation to things like marketing, for example, is we don't do one thing. We don't put all our eggs in one basket. We have multiple experiments going on so that we don't, we learn faster that way, but also so that we aren't dependent on the outcome of any one experiment.
I like all of that. It reminds me of something I did recently where I took a big risk. It didn't go, and when I say I took a big risk, what I mean is this can either go really well and the payoff's going to be huge, or it could go the other way and the consequences are going to be quite large as well. And it went the other way in this specific situation. But what I did after was write down the things that, and I don't do this when I'm giving feedback to others, but I did it when I'm giving feedback to myself. Like, what did I do that I didn't like? Like, I wanted to kind of like, what were the points that didn't go well? What could I do better, and what did I learn? And now I've got this living document that I can add to and refer back to. And I've already referred back to it when a similar situation arose to ensure that I didn't make the same mistakes again that I made the first time. So this for me is an example of what you're talking about. But then it also makes me think about coming back to status. And I know we've just talked about the importance of framing and language and words, but it's how I think it's relevant for this. And I'm going to throw it at you and see what you think, because it's just an idea I'm forming in my mind. It's like, if status is like part of being the human condition, like we want to, and it's not true for everyone, but like the average person wants to be recognized by their peers. And to be seen as knowledgeable and experienced and efficient at what they're doing. Putting a bit of marketing out there, your risk, it might be judged and people might give you less status or whatever. It's not something that I've been trying to work on myself, is that it's okay. Like, you're human, like you want status, but it's not, there's a healthy way to get status and there's an unhealthy way to get status. So an unhealthy way to get status. I heard someone on the podcast the other day saying that he owns a gym, and he's got these people that come into the gym and they set up all of their exercise equipment and they put on their exercise gear and they take a few photos and then they leave again. Right? They don't even work out. They just go to the gym to get these photos so that they get these likes and all this stuff on whatever place they post those photos. So I'm not saying that I advocate for that, but you can also, I spoke to someone the other day who told me for their business, they've got all of these different spreadsheets, and in these spreadsheets, they track a whole bunch of different components of their business, including things like how much they're giving back to the community and scholarships and all of this stuff. And they've got this data, and that's, I think, a healthier way to get status. And my example of writing down the things that I learned is like another way to say, no, I do have this experience.
Yeah.
No, I can go through this and I can learn this. And so I think those things. Yeah. and I'm throwing it at you to get your feedback.
Two things. One, what I love about what you did is that you, let me ask you a question first. How did it feel when you first realized that the whole thing wasn't going your way? It wasn't going to be the big payoff you were hoping. How did it feel?
Well, I've mentioned this in a couple of podcast episodes now because it was a big risk in my journey, and so I've been processing it. It what I tell you what it looked like. It looked like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not being able to go back to sleep
Yeah. Yeah.
because my mind was racing, and trying to unpack that for myself. Why? Like, I was getting so frustrated at myself.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I was like, it's okay to be frustrated, but then I was sorry, go on.
Right. But the reason I ask about, like, what emotions and feelings you were having is that you're human, right? And none of us likes to not have a win. Like, we don't like when something fails. It doesn't feel good when something doesn't go the way that we had hoped it would. What I love about what you did was that you said, okay, I'm going to set down the emotional part of my brain for a minute, and I'm going to turn on the analytical part of my brain. And I'm going to take a look at, I'm going to set aside, all whatever those swirling emotions are, and the thoughts keeping you up at 4 o'clock in the morning and all of that. And I'm going to do, a debrief the same way that we would if we were training a dog, and we stop and we, at the end of a session, we go, oh, okay, I did not get where I had hoped I would go. Why not? What happened? Because you can walk away from a training session thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible trainer. I don't know what I'm doing, and let all the imposter syndrome, kind of start to leach in. Or you can stop and say, let me sit down and look with an analytical frame of mind at that training session and figure out what I can learn from it that I can apply to the next one. And that's part of being, a good trainer. And we can do that in business as well. So I love that you did that. It also made me think about isolation again, right? Because that feeling of, being awake in the middle of the night with, thoughts roiling and trying to get a hold of emotions, and thinking through all the, oh God, if I had just, or what if I had, or what went wrong, and all of that. And then also thinking about, what you were saying about wanting to be seen and to be, acknowledged. All of that brings me back to that piece about isolation again, because wins they don't feel as good when nobody else knows about them. It's just like, we can feel really good about it in ourselves, but that's part of being seen, right? Is having other people acknowledge what we've accomplished. And also the failures, the experiments that don't go the way we want them to, they feel so much bigger and hairier when we're dealing with them by ourselves. And I think one of the things and I imagine that you see this in ATA on the training side, that so much of what ATA does is, helping people, to get better at what they do. And part of that is about celebrating what they've accomplished, the training wins they have. And part of that is about helping each other figure out, why something stalls out or why something doesn't work. And it's the same thing in Thrive with business, in that, a huge part of why that community is so powerful, and why the trainers there experience success in their businesses, is because part of the culture in there is that we actively celebrate wins, right? Without embarrassment, that it's a place where you can say, oh my God, I did this thing. Oh my gosh, this worked. And it's not bragging. And people are so excited. They're as excited for you as you are for yourself. But also it's a place where you can be very safely vulnerable, where you can share your setbacks, where you can share your doubts, where you can share the fear. And the power of, and this was, kind of goes to the very beginning of our conversation when I was saying, know that you're not alone in this, because the power of that is seeing that other people totally get it and they've been there too. And there's something about saying, okay, I tried this thing and it didn't work, and having, all of these peers step up and say, oh my gosh, that happened to me too, or I'm so sorry, I know how bad that feels. And to pick you up and help you figure out the next step, to normalize it, right? And that's really what it's about, is normalizing that, when we train, we're going to have good sessions and we're going to have sessions that don't go quite as well as we expected them to. And when we run a business, we are going to have great experiments. We're going to have difficult ones. We're going to have amazing experiences with clients, and we're going to have occasional cases that just, it's not the training itself, but the client relationship. And you're just, but that, you've been talking a lot about, a lot of your questions have been about, being human and the human condition. But at the heart of who we are as humans is we're social animals. And some of us are extroverted and some of us are introverted and some of us need more downtime than others, etc. But we are at the heart social animals. And I think trying to do really big, complicated, difficult, scary things by ourselves makes them a lot more complicated, scary, and difficult.
As you were talking there, because I'm aware of how long we're talking and looking at my list of questions that I got from my survey results, I realized we haven't asked any of them directly, but we've pretty much covered everything that I was going to ask about anyway. But I'm going to borrow a question from another podcaster now to ensure that this episode extracts maximum value from Veronica Boutelle for the listeners of this particular episode. That podcast host is Stephen Bartlett, who hosts a podcast called Diary of a CEO, which I've been listening to. And he posed this question to his guest at the end, and that is, what is one thing that we didn't talk about today on the things we've been talking about that you think we should have addressed?
I think we really kind of have covered it. We were talking about how imposter syndrome can lead to inaction. I think it can also, one small thing maybe that I can add there is I also think it can lead to poor action or poor decision making. That sometimes it's about not taking any action at all. Sometimes we take actions that are counterproductive, like pricing ourselves too low, or selling packages that are too small to make the difference that we're being hired to make, or getting to the end of a sales conversation and not trying to make the sale. So I think that sometimes it's about inaction, sometimes it's about counterproductive action, poor decisions. But again, I mean, really, to me, it all comes back to, if we're going to battle imposter syndrome, I feel like there are three things. One is education, but I feel like trainers are really good at that, right? It's like, well, I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep getting better at what I do. But please don't use that as an excuse for inaction. You can still do good in the world while you continue to develop your skills. The second is to keep your purpose forefront all the time, your why, to remember that you do this for service, to think about who you're serving, both human and dogs, and to use that as the inspiration to push through the difficult moments. And then I think three, community, knowing that you're not alone and knowing that we really have turned a corner in our industry where isolation doesn't have to be your norm. That even if you don't have local community where you live, that there are ways to connect with other trainers and to not have to figure out the training side on your own, and to not have to figure out the business side on your own either.
I've been running ATA for 10. We celebrated our 10-year birthday last year, so we've been going 10 and a half years now. And what keeps our long-term members, that we've got the first person to ever sign up for a membership with us. So we've done other things other than membership before we started the membership, but the first person is still with us. I think the second person is still with us. I think the third person is still with us. I think the fourth person is still with us.
Incredible.
I was reflecting on some of that with them this past week. So why have they stayed? And I think the big reason, and what comes through in the surveys we put out, is community. I think as well, what comes through in a survey, well, I don't think I have data. I know what comes through in the survey is isolation is such a big challenge. And you've obviously talked about that a lot today. So you're seeing the same thing that our survey data and we're seeing within Animal Training Academy. But it's interesting. My thoughts at the moment around all of this because I know that we provide community, but I just don't think it's what people, people don't lie in bed at night going, oh, I just need community. It's not the problem that brings people or to us or necessarily people might not realize that they need.
It's interesting. I think that you're largely right about that. I think that it's solutions, right, and support that drive people to something like Animal Training Academy or to Thrive. But I do think that it's community that creates the stickiness afterward, right? Because it is interesting. We survey our members a lot as well, and we see the same sort of thing. That a big part of why they stay is community, but also, of course, a big part of why they stay is because they're learning and they're experiencing success with their businesses. But I also do think, though, so we Thrive turned 5 last year, but we've been doing this work in general since 2003. And so, in the years before Thrive, we worked with trainers one-on-one. And one of the big themes out of that work all the time was isolation. And so I don't know if people go looking for something like this for community, but I do know that that trainers, by and large, feel isolated when they don't have it. It was difficult because before Thrive, we had to say, you're not alone in that. Other trainers feel that too. But that's really different than getting to experience putting an end to it by interacting as part of a community. So yeah, it's interesting.
Before we wrap up, do you want to share with the listeners of this podcast if they are feeling isolated in their journey to build, grow, start their dog training or animal training business, a little bit about what Thrive is and how the listeners of this show can find out more or experience, take an experiment and dive into Thrive and get to experience everything you've been talking about?
Well, we have 2 versions of the program. There's Thrive Essentials and Thrive Pro. Thrive Pro, so both of the programs are a comprehensive support, a guided education about how to start or how to grow and build a solid dog training business, one that's financially successful and also one that is enjoyable and sustainable, one that really provides for good life business balance and that you actively enjoy running and feel confident running, given that word that we've been using today. Thrive Essentials is a guided but self-paced version of the program, and Thrive Pro is a version of the program with live teaching and all sorts of community elements where you're actively interacting with other trainers in it. And so there are 2 different versions of that, but you can learn about both of them at dogbizsuccess.com/thrive. And that page will kind of walk you through all that we do and compare the 2 different versions of the program and how they work. But the basic concept is that you get walked through a step-by-step guided program for your business level. So your first step will be to come in, will help you determine your business level. There are 5 stages of business. We'll help you determine which stage you're in and then provide personalized educational content step by step to get you to the next stage and to help you identify and reach the goals that you have.
Fantastic. And we will, of course, link to all of us in the show notes as well to make it easy for you to listen. Well, I don't know if that is actually easier than just going to Google, but if it is.
But the thought is there, the sentiment is there. You're going to make it easy.
The intent is there. This has been so much fun. So from myself and on behalf of everyone listening, we really appreciate everything that you and your team are doing, Veronica, with Dogbiz and Thrive, and for taking the time to come and hang out with me on the podcast show today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
And thank you so much for listening as well. This is your host, Ryan Cartlidge, signing off from this episode of the Animal Training Academy podcast show. We hope today's conversation inspired you and equipped you with new tools for your trainer's toolbox. Remember, every challenge in training is an opportunity to learn and sharpen your animal training geekery. Embrace the rough patches, learn from them, and keep improving. And don't forget, the path to growing your skills and expanding your knowledge continues beyond this episode. Visit www.atamember.com to join our supportive membership, where you will find a community of trainers just like you. Together, we're making a huge positive difference in the lives of animal and human learners worldwide. Until next time, keep honing your skills, stay awesome, and remember, every interaction with an animal or human learner is your opportunity to create ripples. We're here cheering you on every step of the way. See you at the next episode.